Hey TV fans and Buffy fans, welcome. Bored now, back with Rachel Macdonald. And you can tell I'm a Buffy fan because of my username. That's a bit of a giveaway. But we're both big Buffy fans, Buffyverse in general fans. Wouldn't have met and we never would have, got together to do this sort of podcast if we didn't have this show in common and like the fandom, because for those of you who don't know, we met on like a Buffy forum, and that's sort of how we developed a friendship, got to know each other. And so it's one of those things. I mean, it's one of the great things about the internet, the way it can bring people together like this from across the world with similar interests who otherwise wouldn't know each other. And I know there's a good amount of the followers of this channel who are Buffy fans, and some of who are on that same forum. So yeah, this feels like a pretty special one to be doing. So Rachel, if you want to talk a bit more about that, how you came to the show.
Absolutely. So yeah, Keith and I, like I said, we met through a Buffy forum, and Buffy is one of those shows that even people today are still finding and discovering. I, however, discovered it very, very young. I was almost exactly the right age to start watching Buffy when it started. I was about 12 or 13. Let's show how old I actually am. But I didn't actually start watching it until I was about 14 years old. The first episode I ever saw was Becoming. I can still remember that. And those of you who know the show know that that is a whopper of an episode to start with. And I kind of just grew up with it. I ended up watching the series kind of all over the place because this was back in the days before streaming or anything like that. So this is when you had to hire DVDs and you had to hire VHS. The first Buffy I ever owned was a VHS copy of just 2 episodes from season 1. One of my best friends bought that for me. So yeah, so I kind of watched Buffy off and on from the age of about 14 to 17. I was about 17 or 18 when the series finished. And then they started to show it on a pay channel here called Foxtel. And I finally got to marathon entire seasons and get to know the show. And I just fell more and more in love with the show. It was right up my alley. I love anything supernatural. I love vampires, as I have spoken about my vampire kink many, many times on this channel. And this show was just right up my alley. Great female lead, great supporting characters. And I have just been watching it off and on for years, but I was very excited to start this rewatch because I actually haven't watched it, I think, since I hit my 30s. So it'll be very interesting to revisit it. But this show has been really close to my heart for so many years. For years in my late teens, it was actually my favorite show ever. It has been eclipsed by a few others, but it'll always be, in the top 25, floating around in there. And definitely a lot of the slang and the fashions and all of that definitely influenced me when I was younger. And it was just a really great show. And when I got really interested in media and movies and dissecting things, Buffy was a great place to start because there's so much to unpack with this show, so many themes, so many, just metaphors and everything that they put into there. So it's definitely been a big part of my life for at least 20 years. What about you, Keith? When did you start watching Buffy? I know you were a later watcher.
A later watcher. So yeah, I mean, I really perked up listening to that about the 2 episodes on the DVD the video. Is that when they put them in volumes where they used to break seasons in because they couldn't fit the whole thing?
They couldn't fit the whole thing.
The VHS.
So you could buy.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's really funny to think back now, and that's probably a big reason why DVDs were invented. And I would have been old enough, and I would actually have been roughly the target audience age at the time. And I think when it was first on, I did that thing of dismissing it like I was a teenage boy. So probably I thought it was mostly a girls show. It was only for girls maybe. And also at the time I didn't really see myself as a nerd, maybe I was a bit more masculine at the time. So I sort of dismissed it as this nerdy type show that I wouldn't like. So it is funny, over the years, people started talking about it and about how clever it was, the humour, the dialogue, how good the characters were. So it was over time where I thought, wow, I've got to check this out. Maybe I did dismiss the show too easily. And A bit like you, it was a bit scattershot because I just started checking random episodes out when they were on like the Sci-Fi Channel, I think it
Oh
was
yeah.
over here, and
Mm.
they would sort of do marathons. But I mean, the way it worked out is I actually started just watching a couple of episodes in like season 6, and I think the first 2 episodes I remember watching, and I can't remember if I watched them to the end, but the first two, like from season 6, were like all the way, and then obviously the next one after that is the musical one, Once More with
Yeah.
Feeling. So they were actually the first 2 episodes of Buffy I saw, which
Wow.
obviously was. And the musical one, we'll get there obviously when we get to season 6, but that's obviously such a well-known episode, and
Mm.
such a popular episode and quite the thing to do at the time on a network show. But it's, yeah, just seeing that out of context, because when
Yeah.
you see Buffy and then understand the sort of things it does, actually them doing a musical episode isn't that far-fetched. But I think when you've never watched the show and then you dive in and start watching that episode, it can be a little bit weird. But
Yeah.
so it was a gradual thing where I watched some episode randomly, and then as I went back, I watched some earlier episodes. It gradually built up, and I thought, yeah, I'm starting to really enjoy this. The characters, the dialogue, as I said, there's some good style to it. There's some good ideas. I'm liking the villains in this show, and yeah, eventually I got the first season for one Christmas, and then I just started buying them one after the other and did a proper watch. And so,
Mm.
as I said, this was later. This was, I think, 2011. About
Oh
then I started
wow.
watching. So it's only like 10 years ago,
10
just over
years.
10.
Yeah.
And it's sort of funny looking back now, because I've done a rewatch of Buffy about 4 or 5 times since, so it's become such a favourite show of mine. Then I've watched it a lot ever since. For the sake of this reviews, we'll only really talk about the seasons that we're on. We won't
Yeah.
really go into spoilers. I mean, if it becomes relevant, we might hint at certain things that maybe are being set up or maybe might come more relevant. But yeah, I mean, so this will be an overview of season 1, what we think of it, some of the character stuff, and various things. There will be another video where we're actually going to do our favorite and least favorite like episodes. We said like a VIP of the season, so our favorite character of the season. Like a bit of a madman, I'm actually going to commit myself to do a full-blown rankings of every episode. So I might come back next week with my order for this season. It's a mid-season replacement,
Yes.
which is interesting. So, and it's definitely originally a cult watch, which slowly grew an audience. It wasn't a massive hit at first. I think the early seasons did steady ratings, and because it was on quite a small network, I think that's
Yeah.
what kept it alive. Whereas on a bigger network, I think the ratings wouldn't have been good enough. But over time, it did build into a hit. Movie we had in '92 with Kirsty Swanson as the Slayer. We reviewed that movie last Halloween, so you can check out that review on the channel. Some ties to that movie in this opening season, some little like callbacks, but really for the most part they wanted to like move away and do different things to the movie. Sort of high school is like hell, and they sort of use that contrasted with the monsters and the demons and stuff. But like there's a big sort of thing where the Hellmouth, this mythical like energy, source of energy that attracts all sorts of demons. Giles has a really good line in the pilot where he's like running through the different sort of demons that come from it. It's a great sort of spiel. But yeah, they're drawn to this place, which essentially is why Buffy's ended up here. Buffy's the new girl in school. She quickly bumps into like Xander, who immediately has a bit of a crush on her, and then you have Willow, the sort of more like book smart, nerdy. I mean, Xander's quite nerdy, but Willow also is pretty nerdy and very book smart. And she quickly becomes a close ally of Buffy. And in a sort of a parallel type thing, at least for a few scenes, Buffy and Cordelia are friends because they're like, there's a big thing made about Cordelia being like the mirror of Buffy, sort of what Buffy was at her old high school, the sort of shallow, sort of vapid valley girl. And so there's a collection of characters. Giles is obviously the Watcher, and he sort of, as a cover, he's like the school librarian. They have like a particularly like close bond over the course of the show.
Opinion, but I love season 1. I have always loved season 1. I think a few weeks ago you and I were talking off camera about how I tend to like shows that are from late 90s and early 2000s, and you like more recent shows. Well, this season is an example of why I love shows from this era. Look, I love that TV has become what it's become. I love that it can now give us big dramas and overreaching arcs, and that can be really good sometimes. But sometimes I miss the simplicity of the late 90s, where all you really need is a spooky high school and some fun monsters and some meta commentary, and you've got a great show. I think season 1 of Buffy is so much fun. It is filled with that 90s cheesiness that I just cannot get enough of. And some of the episodes, they are, and we'll get into this when we talk into individual episodes, but some of these episodes are so aware that what they're doing is so cheesy, and it just kind of rolls with it. I think the characters are really fun and fresh in this season. I love seeing all of the establishing characterization. You know, we see the foundation that's going to be built upon for where these characters are going to go later on down the track. And I like the smallness of season 1. Now, shows, obviously, especially a show like Buffy, which is a supernatural show, shows have to build. You know, they have to get bigger and bigger as the threats become bigger, as the mythology becomes bigger. But sometimes I really miss the intimacy of the early seasons of Buffy, especially season 1, where it really is just about this high school that has all of this crazy shit going on. You know, we don't have hell gods or mares or anything like that yet. We just have this really spooky high school, this really fun setting. And again, we'll talk more as we get into it, but I really like that season 1 has these really cool kind of horror vibes that kind of get lost after season 2. A lot of the cinematography is very, you know, eerie. A lot of it's late at night. There's lots of shadows. There's lots of eerie music. The score is like definitely more of a horror score. And a lot of the tropes they're sending up are like fun, kind of cheesy 80s and 90s horror tropes. Some of these episodes really feel like little B-grade 90s horror movies. And I really love that feel. So just as an overall opinion, yeah, I love season 1, and I think it's a lot of fun. And as we talk more, we can get more into it. What about you? What do you think of Buffy season 1?
So, yeah, I think you've misrepresented me a little bit with that, because I do have nostalgia for that stuff as well. And as you know, one of my other favourite shows of all time is The X-Files. So, and I sort of feel a little bit with that of some of the look of that. I mean, I think that has a bit more of a budget, especially comparing the early seasons. But I mean, yeah. So no, I have nostalgia for this period as well, and I think that's what holds up about a lot about season 1 is a lot of it is nostalgia, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's kind of cheesy, but it's entertaining cheese. So yeah, it's not really then I have a problem with that. But having said that, and I think this might be an unpopular opinion, I still think season 1's the weakest season, and that includes
the latest season. Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that more when we do our season ranking, but I definitely disagree with that.
The weakest because the show didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, it hadn't come into its own. So I think there's obviously signs of mythology building. Obviously, you get Angel in season 1, who's a little bit of a stalker the way it comes across, and
Yeah, he's a little bit Edward
dressed
Cullen-like in season
like a
1.
bit of a like sexy nightclub bouncer or something. I mean, that fashion. Where did he get the fashion sense? So we'll just say actually quickly, David Boreanaz, wasn't he just discovered like watering his garden or walking his dog
Walking
or
his
something?
dog.
And I think that
Yeah, I think it was.
and
I
that's
think it was
literally
Marty Noxon, or Jane Espenson. It was one of the female writers. Yeah, they were
right.
looking for Angel, and she's like, "Oh yeah, there's this guy who walks his dog really late at night in my neighborhood,
And we
and
think
he looks
he'll
kind of
be
lurky,
good.
and we think he'll be good." So yeah,
Yeah. So I mean that's just a really interesting fact considering how big that actor now is and how
yes,
sort of how much money he's gone on to make in some big like network shows and but yeah, modest beginning. So I do actually like that story of the way they discovered him because in some ways it's another layer to the mystique of the character. So yeah, the point I was making is that there is certain things with him, like obviously the episode Angel is a big episode in season 1. That's a big sort of mythology style episode, and that's when he starts to get a little bit more to do, a little bit more sort of meat on the bones. And also the last episode of the season, Prophecy Girl, which
Prophecy
is a
Girl.
really strong episode. That
Yeah.
and that's one thing Buffy always did well, like really good season finales. But
I agree.
Prophecy Girl, actually, that feels like a statement, that episode. That feels like the show saying, this is what this show can be. This is, a sign of things to come. And I think it's sort of funny because we all obviously talk about Angel one day, but the show Angel, that is. But it's sort of funny because I actually feel a little bit similar than both shows kind of took a season and a half to really lift off, to like really become the shows that you sort of know. I mean, obviously Buffy's first season was shorter than Angel's first season, so it's not a direct sort of comparison, but I do sort of feel then, I mean, giving away some feelings, but I do sort of feel then it's round about the midpoint of season 2 where Buffy really becomes the great show than it would become. And I mean, certainly not for a long time. It never looks back after that, really. And I sort of felt the same with Angel, that the first season was a little hit and miss, and then it was mid-season 2 where it really got going. But that's a future discussion. But so that's one reason, because I think the show it was just finding its feet because it was a mid-season replacement. So it's a bit like Darla. You sort of think if they had more of a plan of the mythology, then you would assume then Darla would have had a bigger role. So I think, although it's frustrating that she doesn't, I think you can understand it because at that point they didn't know about the mythology of the vampires and the whole thing with her and Angel.
Yeah.
Obviously, we get a hint of it in that episode I mentioned, but that is one reason I think why she has a bit of a short berth on the show, because they just, for a lot of season 1 they were developing it, and
literally originally just Vampire Girl #1. Like that's what she was in the script, and then they must have decided to build the mythology. Like I do kind of get what you're saying in that the show hadn't really found its feet, it hadn't really developed its mythology yet, and I do agree that it is in season 2 that it grows the beard, so to speak. But I do think there are a lot of instances in season 1 where you can see that even though they're not quite there yet, they definitely know what they're doing with regards to certain things. Like when I sat down to watch it, and I was just watching just the opening scene of episode 1. Now, these days that opening scene is nothing to look to sniff at. But in 1997, watching that scene, was such a subversion. You know, you have that eerie high school setting and you see the young guy and the young girl come into the school and you think, oh my God, she's going to die. And then you have that brilliant moment where she turns around in full vamp face and just chows down the guy. And I think that right
It's
there just
great.
shows you that, yeah, that Joss and his crew, they knew that they wanted to subvert horror tropes, that they wanted to show a difference. Like, I mean, Joss's whole thing about Buffy came about because he felt sorry for the tiny blonde that always died in horror movies. And he was like, what if she turned
Wanted to
around and
turn
actually
it
fought
around.
back? Yeah. And so that's where Buffy came from. And so I think a lot of season one, like a lot of the horror tropes that they play with, like the praying mantis episode or the pack, you know, just these ideas that we have seen before, but they kind of turn them on their head. Like I love the praying mantis episode that she's going after
Mm.
virgin boys. It's such a nice spin on the whole you must sacrifice a virgin female, you know? So again, it's kind of like this predatory female creature coming after
Okay.
virgin boys. You know, it kind of, there's quite a few instances, I think, in season one where you do see, you know, these metaphors being produced and these storylines being turned on their heads that again, they definitely fine tune much better in later seasons, but I think they do really well in the early seasons. I mean, when you look at Nightmares, for example, they do that again with Fear itself in season four. And I would say Nightmares is just as effective as Fear itself, which pretty much,
No
you know,
way.
oh, it
No
is
way.
though.
No,
I
it's
mean, that
not.
scene
Nightmares is
Where Buffy's dad tells her that she's the
yeah,
reason
but
that, oh my God, that broke my heart. Also,
yeah.
I love Nightmares. We're going to have a whole discussion about
No,
Nightmares.
I don't like nightmares.
How could
Night,
you like
night, because it's
Nightmares?
so underwhelming. And the
Oh,
problem, you're right. That's a great scene, but it feels like it's from a different episode, and that's the problem. And it's a really goofy, cheesy episode where you just get all this random stuff happening, and there's no like narrative sort of pulling it all together. And sorry, I know it's terrible to talk about a boy who gets abused, but I didn't give a shit about Billy. He was an annoying little brat.
oh
He
no.
was, the actor was pretty bad, and he was a typical, kid on annoying little wet behind the ears kid on TV.
Oh
I,
my God. That is terrible.
I'm pretty
Poor
sure there's other
Billy.
people who would back me up.
Oh no. See,
Like, it's not. I'm not saying it's a terrible episode, but it's definitely more on the mediocre front for
really?
me.
See, I think that episode is really good. I think it touches on a really important issue, which is child abuse that happens. I mean, Stephen played sports growing up, and he had coaches that were like, you
Yeah.
know, borderline abusive. So I think that brings stuff to light. I think you see a little bit of insight into Xander. It's very quick, but you do see it towards the end when they get Billy to unmask the ugly man. And I know it's cheesy. I mean, who dreamt up the giant wasps? Like, seriously, who thought that was a good
Yeah.
idea? But I think with season one, because so much of it is that kind of cheesiness, I don't know, for me, for that episode at least, it works. Plus, I love seeing Xander punch the clown in the face. That's fun. And I have to say, the scene where the ugly
It's
man
fun
beats up
seeing.
Laura in the basement is a really horrific scene. Like, I have a hard time watching that scene because it's really quite violent,
Mm-hmm.
and Laura is really quite. I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect episode. I'm not even saying it's
think,
one of my favorites, but I think it's
but
better than you're giving it credit for.
no, I don't. I think it's completely, pretty much forgettable and mediocre. But I think you actually hit on one of my problems with it. Is I don't really feel those darker moments are fit with the rest of the episode, and I don't think they belong in that sort of episode. Because it feels like a bit of a grab bag of an episode, and it feels like you can only really do one or the other. You either make it a darker, more serious episode. Because this is one of the limitations of like Case of the Week style TV, and one of the good things about Buffy is that it gets a really good balance as a show, because the quality, you get good and bad episodes, because any shows like this you do, but it's like, you get obviously a good core case of the week episodes, and some of those are really good, some aren't so good, but also you in most seasons, and I mean season one, because it's a shorter season maybe suffers from this, but in the other season you tend to get good sort of storytelling and an arc built over the course of the season. So as a show it tends to get a good happy medium between the two. I would say, I mean, sort of mentioning the X-Files again, it's sort of the opposite with that, where I think the X-Files, the Monster of the Week episodes are some of the best episodes, but it's the arc episodes that sometimes let that show down. It's the opposite with Buffy. I actually think the arc episodes are the stronger. I would say the best Monster of the Week episodes on Buffy are the ones that actually add to the characters and the mythology, as well as doing a good sort of like Monster of the Week sort of storyline. But my point about Nightmares is I think the problem is because it is a one-off Monster of the Week style episode, then it doesn't really have enough time to really do anything that much with like a storyline about child abuse. So it just feels a bit tacked on to this episode with all this random shit happening elsewhere. So that's why I can understand how it's an important issue and how it, you know, I mean, okay, fair enough, those scenes were disturbing to you. Fair enough, but I mean, that's part of the problem. I think because it is a one-off Monster of the Week style episode, apart from obviously the impact of that scene with Hank and Buffy, that obviously, yeah, Hank's the worst, by the way. But
Hank is the worst, by the way. We will
even
talk
given
about
the fact that that scene's obviously not real technically, but but that is a really good scene, and that's one of the early examples of what a good actress Sarah Michelle Gellar is.
Oh my god, I know
how much she
cries
brings
in that scene, and
it's so effective. But that scene works because obviously you've grown to care about Buffy over the episodes leading up to it, and you care about Buffy, so you care then she's just having this really terrible moment with her father and it's really upsetting her. But you don't know who Billy is outside of this episode, and because, as I said, it's just a random one-off Monster of the Week, you know, it doesn't really mean anything. Like, it's not given enough time for it to really make that much of an impact.
Okay, we're going to point of contention here. So you're going to like poo-poo all over Nightmares, and yet I have seen you defend I, Robot, You, Jane. So we gotta sort this out, man, because I don't know how you can defend that pile of crap.
Guilty pleasure, that's why. Guilty pleasure.
I mean, come on. I, Robot, You, Jane, aside from introducing Jenny Calendar, does nothing good.
Yeah, that's a great debut. Well, yeah, this review is already going all over the place.
It's going all over the place, yeah.
No, okay, so, because another point I was going to make about the season is that it is very cheesy, and I think a lot of times it's bad cheese. You know, a lot of times.
Oh my god.
Well, okay, for example, I disagree with you about the Praying Mantis episode. I think.
Oh, I love Teacher's Pet.
That episode pretty much sucks. Now, the one thing I'll say, and I'm sure this is something you'll agree with, is because of how good the characters are in Buffy, and you enjoy their banter and their interactions. I think normally, even in a bad episode, where like the central idea or gimmick of the episode is bad, you normally still quite enjoy watching the episode just because of the Scoobies.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we've not got to season 2 yet, but I mean, just to name an early episode from that, Some Assembly Required, that's a totally mediocre, disposable episode, which is made a lot better because you enjoy a lot of the stuff going on with the Scoobies in it. Like, the Monster of the Week in that episode is pretty crap, but like you still have quite good fun in the episode because of the Scoobies and stuff, and that's one of the big strong points about this show. Is it's a rare show where even the bad episodes are made at least a bit better and watchable because of the quality of the characters. The robot you Jane thing. It's a guilty pleasure. Like it might be my love for like B movies and sort of robot style things.
Yeah.
So it's just tickles my fancy. You know, I accept that it's a bit of a naff, goofy episode, but there's just something about it that tickles my fancy. I mean, you highlighted Jenny's debut, which I agree. It's the best point about it. That whole discussion with her and Giles over books versus computers is just fantastic. It's just a great sort of debate they have back and forth. And one thing I'll say about Jenny, I always see her as like the cool teacher. Like every school has one where she's a little bit younger, a little bit more hip, and you know, can connect a bit more with the kids.
Great lines in that episode too, which is talking about is like, the idiot box is TV, Rupert.
Yeah.
This is the good box. You know, she's just when she's calling snob and just or the reveal that she knows funny about demons. Like, I love when he's all like, there's a demon in the internet, and she's like, yeah, I know. And it's like, what? How do you know? And the corkscrew line at the end, which is a little saucy.
So
That's a little naughty.
She adds a little bit of spice, and but the whole debate. It's such a great debate because I obviously love how romantic he gets over books, saying, you know, books have that smell and stuff, and like, you're right there with him, but also she makes some good arguments, and I sort of love the line about information being kept in like little sort of deposits for like white,
only a handful of white guys can get at them.
And I was nodding at that point. I think that's a good point as well. So like absolutely. The debate generally, and one of the things about Giles as a character which I really like is, I think his association with Buffy and the others, and his relationship with Jenny, it actually makes him more open-minded over time. You know, definitely. It's almost like, because obviously Buffy's a very like grounded traditional character who sort of is very direct and quite sort of like sparky, and it's almost like, obviously Giles was always at heart a good character and stuff, but I think when the show starts, he's very much in the mold of, this is my job, this is how I've been trained, these are my methods. So I almost feel then what Jenny is talking about can be applied to the Watchers Council, where Giles comes from. There's this whole thing about them being very like stuck in their ways, you know, like rich upper class white guys. Yeah,
we're going to talk about those dudes as we keep going, because there's a whole lot to unpack with the Watchers Council. Yeah.
I look forward to that, but that is one parallel I can see, and it's something where that's why the Giles Buffy relationship is such a good father-daughter thing.
So good.
Because it's not just him adding stuff to her life, knowledge and stuff, and
no, she's adding to him.
Really good couple. She was really good for him, but there is stuff. I do give that episode credit for being an early precursor for online social media, even though they go to some ridiculous places. You know, the whole conceit is really silly. I mean, I keep forgetting that it actually starts in Romania years ago. And
like, I know.
What the fuck is this opening? But there's some funny stuff in the episode. I enjoy Buffy's when she makes this gag about what do you think I'm gonna just show up in like trench coat and glasses, and then she actually does, and that's a good example of the smart humor of this show. But and also the water fountain scene at the end, it's such a simple scene, but
that one
I
is
just
cute.
love the three of them sitting there and they're reflecting on their sort of failed romances and how they keep getting attracted to like demons and various, you know, monsters. So and just a nice little so it's a guilty pleasure. I accept
enough.
it. It's
Fair
a crap
enough.
episode, but it's
I'll
a
let
guilty
you have it as a guilty pleasure. I do love how dated it is, though. Like, I absolutely love when Willow says, I met him online, and Buffy's like, online for what? And it's like, oh, come on.
I do also enjoy Willow fighting back at the end of the episode. You know, where she says, I think it might be time we broke up smash it. Because Moloch, oh man, I felt so bad for Moloch. Those eyes. When he actually gets hurt, you know, when she's saying, "I'm not your girlfriend. I'll never." He's actually got like sad eyes on.
No, he's a robot. He's a big demon-horned robot. It looks
but that's why it's meant to be. You can tell that's what they're going for. Okay, so we can
now
talk.
That we've defended our respective episodes, although I think I'm going to have to do some more work when it comes to Praying Mantis Lady.
Well, we'll dive into a few more episodes because there's more to. But no, I mean, just to round up my point, because we went all around the houses.
We did.
I mean, to round up my point, and to put this in context, I absolutely love this show. I think it's one of the most consistent shows and one of the most rewatchable shows for me, which is a big factor when it comes to shows I love.
Me too.
So even saying that this is my least favourite season, as a personal choice, I still enjoy it. You know, it is not like I'm saying it's bad. It's just within the realm of Buffy and the 7 seasons. Personal taste. But even saying it is very watchable, I agree with you. You know, as cheesy as it is, I do agree it's very watchable. Another thing to say, so I'm going to ask you a question, but what do you think about the Master as a villain?
I like the Master. I think he really works for this season because he's cheesy and he's hammy. He feels like an old kind of Hammer horror villain, you know? He's all like, rise, and over the top. And Mark Metcalf is obviously it's Mark Metcalf, right?
Good actor,
he's obviously having like the best time. And I think the Master this season is used really well because obviously season 1 doesn't have a huge arc, but it does start and end with the Master. And what I really like is that he's always kind of like lingering, you know, like he's this threat that Buffy knows that one day she will have to face. So he's kind of like this overreaching presence in the series. And, you know, they bring him in the first episode, then we see him again in the middle of the season, then we see him in Nightmares, and then we see him in Prophecy Girl. So I think he's used really effectively and used just enough that he's a big enough threat, but not so much that, you know, you feel like the entire season is wrapped up in him. Prophecy Girl is obviously one of the best episodes, if not the best episode of season 1, and he is so good in that. But I also think, you know, The Harvest and Welcome to the Hellmouth are also really great. You know, he is just hamming it up and he's just having so much fun. And I love his look. You know, I love that even early on in the mythology, they've established that he is so old that he's stuck in vampire face. You know, it differentiates him from the other vampires and shows that, like, yes, he is like the big head honcho, like he's the one you don't mess with. And you know, I just think he's a great character. They obviously knew that too because they brought him back several times over the series. So I really love the Master, and I think he's a fun villain. Not one of the best villains, but definitely a fun villain. What about you?
I was going to say, I also enjoyed when they brought him back later. There's some fun to be had in those scenes, and like there's particularly a season 3 episode they bring him back in, which is really a
Yes.
strong episode, and his
Yes.
appearance in that is really good. But
Mhm.
I pretty much agree with what you said. I think because it's season 1, it's a good sort of entry level type vampire. Just as you said, a bit more traditional, a bit more like Hammer horror, definitely campy, hammy, very entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, Matt Cove's a good actor, so he does have a little bit of a menace as well, particularly, you know, some of those scenes in Prophecy Gal.
Yes.
And I agree, then you're not going to necessarily put him up there with the best villains, because as things go on, you get villains who have longer, more satisfying arcs, and there's a bit more depth to them. But as like a season 1 entry level villain, so, yeah, he's solid. I enjoy Mark Metcalf. Probably, I think he just suffers a bit from it only being 12 episodes, and at times it feels like he'll pop up here, but then you'll go 3 episodes without seeing him, and it's a bit... He could have done with maybe being in more episodes to sort of remind you about the sort of arc of the season with him. So, it's... Yeah.
I like his lair as well. I like the design of his lair under the Hellmouth. You know, it's very gothic-y, very creepy, of the tunnels and like the pool of blood and everything. The aesthetics in season 1 are pretty cool. Like I said, I like the just overall, I like the darker look of season 1. I went and I watched this on DVD.
Enjoy.
I was not going to watch this streaming because I am not watching that horrible remaster. So I pulled out my DVDs and I went, yes, I'm watching this the way it was supposed to be seen, and I really like the aesthetics of season 1. You mentioned not liking the cheesiness, but I love the cheesiness of season 1. I love how they really embrace a lot of like really cheesy visuals that have like fallen by the wayside, like Witch, for example, the episode Witch. I love that she has a cauldron.
I enjoy
Witch has a cauldron now? You know, you have the cauldron and the bubbling green goo in the cauldron.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
I agree. This,
you know?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying everything. I'm just saying certain things. But Witch
is a great episode. I love Witch.
Yeah. It's solid. I mean, great is a bit over the top. But it's an enjoyable, solid episode. The best stuff in Witch is Giles hamming it up when he's doing that spell. You know, when he puts that, right? It's like, release! Release! I crack up every time I see that.
So good. Oh, I'm with you.
Release the unworthy. Release! Release! Release!
He's really going full hog, isn't he? He's like, he's getting into it. I love Witch. It's got so many great moments. I love like all like juiced up, drugged up Buffy before she, you know, succumbs to the spell when she's in cheerleading practice, and they're all doing it, and she's just like there going like, yeah, turn up the music, and it's like, okay, Buffy, let's dial it down a little bit, girl. Like, yeah. Plus,
because Cordy has a good line in that scene. It's when the cheerleader's set on fire.
I love that.
Yeah, she's on fire, and
enough with the hyperbole, please.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah, which is fun. I enjoy the macho man when Buffy first gets put under. That is such a good thing. Juice, yeah. Yeah, that's a solid episode. I enjoy Witch. But yeah, but I think it's probably just because of what the show became. You know, I mean, if it didn't have that development in later seasons, then maybe I would look back on this season with a bit more fondness. I still enjoy it, but it's just seeing, because you talked about the music and stuff, but for me, when you get to season 2 is when they get Christoph Beck to do the music.
Yeah, Christoph Beck.
The music is so much better.
I definitely agree. Like in terms of like scores and some of the scores that we get in the latest seasons, I mean, Close Your Eyes is one of my favorite scores ever. Jenny's theme, the theme for the gift
Yeah.
later on, even the score for like episodes like Hush, so good. But I think what I really like about season 1 is I forgot how minimal and how like just eerie the score is, you know. Again, it's because the show hasn't gotten bigger yet. It's still a very small, contained show. So like a theme like Close Your Eyes would not work in season 1. You need that kind of more minimal eeriness. And I think season 1 does that really great. I also think that despite its cheesiness and its lighter tone, there are quite a few eerie, sinister moments in season 1 that are actually really creepy when you think about them. Like even just Witch, okay? Like the girl whose mouth like closes up, like that scene is really like, dude,
But
no. I mean, bad special
it's
effects.
a bad effect,
But
I
the
think that
idea of
takes me
what's going
out
on
of
with
it.
that, it doesn't bother me. Or even Cordelia going blind. The pack, I find the pack really sinister. Like I actually love the pack, and I think the hyenas are uber creepy.
That's interesting.
Like uber creepy. You're not a fan of the pack?
No, I am actually. I think it's underrated. I think it's an episode that gets a bad rap and is much better than people. No, that's definitely one I was going to ask you about because it really divides people, that episode.
Oh, I love the pack. I have always loved the pack ever since I first watched Buffy. It's just so sinister. I think it really speaks to bullying and pack mentality and what happens when teenagers, you know, group together. I think the fact that they ate their principal.
That's a dark scene.
That is a dark scene.
That scene and the direction. Now, I think probably it being a network show, there's a limitation there where they couldn't really show much. But I think it's actually one of those limitations that actually benefited the scene because
I agree.
Them cutting away and actually showing the picture of him on the desk with his family, I think it is, or it might just be him, but a picture of him anyway. As you hear them basically eating him in the background, that actually makes the scene more disturbing and powerful.
Absolutely.
And just the way that scene plays out, because they're sort of intercutting it with like another scene with Buffy and Sandra, I think. And the intercutting in that scene makes it all the more disturbing and powerful. And just the moment where that scene tips over from quite a light scene to something a lot more disturbing and scary is so impressive. And it's one of the things this show does very early on in its run. It actually lays down a marker where, and once again, it's part of the subversion where saying, you think this character is going to be a long running character? Well, we've got news for you. I mean, you would have assumed that Principal Flutie would have, at the very least, made it to the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Been in there the whole season, but no, that they take him out mid-season and we get a new principal. So that's a calling card of the show. Then they're not afraid to kill off a character like that in a very brutal way.
I miss that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I know we've had similar conversations. And obviously they do it as well in the pilot because a lot of people would have thought Jesse might have been a regular, and he actually gets turned into a vamp, and ultimately they have to kill him, which is a good touch because poor Xander, but it's obviously a good way to confront Xander with the reality of this world, and that as Joel said, once you go in there, it's no longer your friend. He's a vampire.
I've had a theory. I've had this for a very long time, and I could just be reading too much into things because that's what I do. But I have always thought that Xander's hatred of vampires, and especially his issues with Angel and Spike, which obviously with Angel it does stem somewhat from jealousy because he does have a crush on Buffy. But I honestly think that a lot of his issues come from his friend being turned. Because you think about it, like in one night, he learns there are vampires, there are monsters, and now my best friend has become a monster. And like the very next day, he's essentially told, this is not, like you said, he's told this is not your friend anymore. This is a monster. You have to kill him. But then he sees Angel walking around, and it's like, well, why does he get to walk around when I have to kill my friend? And while he has the soul, he's Xander, but he puts up with it. But as soon as Angel, obviously, we'll get into this in season 2, but when Angel becomes Angelus, I honestly do think that a big part of his issue with Buffy being unable to kill him is because of what happened with Jesse. Because, I mean, when you look at how affected Xander was in that first episode. And I also think it really speaks to Xander as a character that, like, less than 24 hours after he's found out all this stuff, he's ready to go into battle. Like, I know Xander has a lot of issues. I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with Xander, and he's got some not so stellar moments, which we'll get to as the series goes on. But I've always, like, I love Xander, and I have a real soft spot for him. And I think that this season really establishes a lot of his traits that will then go on to become like big character traits with him. And I think that it's so interesting that right from that first episode, he has always been so ready to follow Buffy into battle. And, you know, he's always been that guy that has, and he, even in the first episode, he's still got that whole thing of, oh, I can't really do anything, I'm useless, which follows him, you know, throughout the seasons. But I just really love that about Xander. And I really do think that, a lot of his issues with vampires stem from what happened with Jesse. Well, I'm just going to jump ahead into a later seasons. I know that they wanted to bring Jesse back for conversations with dead people, and Eric Balfour was not available, so they couldn't bring him back. Yeah, and I think that's a real pity because, like, I really wish that we had revisited Jesse a little bit more, because he obviously was very close with Xander and with Willow, and he never really comes up again. And I think that's just a shame, because plus I love Jesse. He gets some really funny lines in that first episode. He's got one of my favorite ones where Cordelia comes to tell him about the dead guy in the locker, and he's like, oh, you know, if you need a shoulder to lean on or even just to nibble on, and it's like, come on, Jesse, man.
Xander's the classic underdog, and I think it's a testament to this show then. Personally, out of the Scoobies, I think he is my least favourite, but it's a testament that he's still a really great character even so. As I said, classic underdogs. There's some great humour with him. He definitely has those moments. He has a good arc, a good development over the show, but he definitely has those moments where he puts his foot in his mouth, where he just goes a little bit too far with some of the jealousy and some of the humor, where he just pushes it a little bit too far. But that's
even then.
We can talk more. About
we'll talk. It'll come up more in season 2, I think, because I think in season 1 he mostly just has his crush, and he kind of just hangs around Buffy and like is hoping that maybe she'll notice him, until he does ask her out. And Prophecy Girl, oh my god, my heart breaks for him in that episode. He's so nervous.
Scene where he actually asks Buffy out to the dance, because that's the balance of this show. Then it's doing, you know, the supernatural stuff really well, and the different sort of horror style plots, but then it does really capture those really authentic teen style moments as well, because that scene does feel like a very realistic scene of a guy having a crush for a girl, putting himself out there, and her trying to let him down gently, which obviously Buffy does in that scene.
She's very
and then
good.
The guy obviously taking it the wrong way, and just taking it to heart and not knowing how to react. So that's a very authentic scene, really well done. But there's just certain things, like in the next scene, Xander's not very fair to Willow, where he basically tries to ask her out as a consolation, and that's a great scene by Willow, because she's very direct, and she's just like, no, if you think I'm gonna go with you and watch you pine over her all night, there's no way. It's great.
It's fantastic. It's a great moment for Willow, because it really shows, I think, because obviously Willow in season 1 has her massive crush on Xander, but I really think that shows that even though she has such a crush on Xander, she still has enough self-respect to know that she's worth like his full attention. Like she's not the rebound girl. Like she deserves to be more than his rebound girl. And I really like that because they very easily could have had her jump at the opportunity, you know, and be like, yes, Xander's asked me out. But she knows it's not sincere, and she knows that she is worth more than that. Even this insecure season 1 Willow knows that she's worth more than that. And I think that's a really good. I mean, they've got some really great moments for Willow in season 1, like some really great character establishing moments where you see the toughness beneath the insecurity, you know, like obviously she's majorly insecure. The fact that when Buffy approaches her, she's like, hi, I mean, do you want me to move? And it's like, no, Willow, just stay there, sweetie. It's all good. But, you know, like when she's watching over Hyena's Xander, and he tries to trick her into giving
that's a great that's another good example.
And she just turns it on her head, you know. She like plays along, and then she's like, well, now I know.
Now I know for sure. Yeah, I think that is why she has a good season, and partly why I like the character so much is like just from the moment she shows up in that first episode, you believe this is a very nervous, not very confident teenage girl. Like you just believe it through the performance, even though you know in reality Alison Hannigan was probably at least in her 20s at the time. But it's just something about the way she like embodies the character, and how nervous she is, the way she speaks. Then you just believe then she is this very awkward, shy teenage girl. But then she does have those moments of growth. I mean, that's sort of partly why I like them exploring her being interested in boys in I, Robot You, Jane for the first time. But no, scenes like the scene in the pack when she like tricks and just certain moments I actually like, because it's one of the darker scenes in Prophecy Girl. I like you know the scene, which is a real horror scene actually. You know when her and Cordelia go to the TV room and their friends are there.
Great scene. That is a fantastic
The blood on the
scene.
TV.
Yeah, the bloody handprint while the 3 little pigs are playing on the TV. Yeah, that is a great scene. You're right. It's like right out of a horror movie, isn't it?
And her acting in the next scene is so good. You know when she has the line about it's not our world anymore. They came into our world.
They made it theirs.
Made it their
own.
And
they had fun.
That's a really powerful. Yeah, exactly.
And I love in the context of that episode that is what pushes Buffy to go and face the Master, you know, seeing how broken Willow is. I think it really shows, because I think season 1 does a really good job of building the friendship between Buffy and Willow and Xander, and showing how Buffy has come to fit in with them and assimilate with them, and how they're there right from the beginning. Like I love how in The Witch, when Buffy's talking about like, you know, going to find Amy, they're like, oh, you know, you're the Slayer and we're like the Slayerettes. You know, and so I just love that they're right there with her. Like a lot, and again, we'll get into this as we get into the later seasons. But a lot of people like to shit on the Scoobies and talk about how they were bad friends to Buffy. But I think there are definitely some issues in the later seasons. But I think at least in these early seasons, the Scoobies are fantastic. I think the Scoobies are so good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
When you think about, like, Buffy herself is obviously an amazing character, and we're definitely going to talk about her arc in season 1 because she does have one. But Buffy is chosen. You know, she kind of has to do this. The Scoobies don't, and they sign up for it with no questions asked. You know, they are there from the beginning. And they are always willing to throw themselves in and help her. And I think that the fact that they established that from so early on is just so good and just lays such a good foundation.
Well, yeah, and I totally agree, because that's something they come back to over the course of the show, where they will say, and Buffy will make the point herself, she'll almost say, in a way, it's a team effort, even though I'm the Slayer. In some ways, without these people backing me up, I probably couldn't do it. Theme of Whedon shows in general, the sort of importance of friendship,
found family. He loves found family,
and it's the way, you know, Xander has his role, Willow has her role, Giles has his role, and then you get obviously a couple of others that join in the group sporadically. But it's like, it's that idea of actually without the Scoobies, there's a good chance Buffy, might actually get killed.
Well, she would have. I mean, we see at the end of this episode, Xander brings her back to life. She would have died at the hands of the Master. Technology build, we learn more about the Slayer and about the isolation that the Slayer feels, but how Buffy is different because she has people. And that's so important for her to have those people. And I have to say, even though I do love the later incarnations of the Scoobies, I love seeing just the original four.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nice to see that original four of Buffy, Willow, Xander, and Giles. Because they were the first ones. They were the ones right from the beginning, and it's really nice, I think, to go back to the beginning and see that dynamic. Of course, I love at the end of the harvest, the Earth is definitely doomed, and
that's
of course,
great line.
That's a great line. And just really, I think, sets up the dynamic of the three Scoobies with Giles as like the overwatchful, like parent, kind of a little bit wary, trying to keep his children out of trouble. Look at Giles and think, oh yeah, you're kind of cute for an old dude. I watch it now and I'm like, oh damn, Giles is fine. Like Giles is looking good.
He's a good looking guy.
He is a good looking guy. And the whole librarian thing just
we'll
works.
get to the Ripper stuff.
Oh, yes, we will.
So I take it you're not unaware of the crush Willow has on him.
No, of course not. She has a picture of him in her locker.
In the locker, yeah. That's something I didn't realise till after a few watches. I think someone pointed it out in a YouTube video. Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah. No, I'm totally on board and understand Willow's crush on Giles. Like,
Willow's great pop culture references in the show, like obviously the Mummy Dearest line in Witch, which is really good.
Yes.
Obviously, the fact I, Robot Eugene is a riff on, obviously I, Tarzan Eugene. And there's also I think it's The Pack, there's an X-Files reference, I can't believe you of all people are trying to scully me.
Mm-hmm.
That is so good.
Now my spidey sense is tingling.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that one too. There's a really oblique reference that I picked up in episode 1. Oh my god, I can't remember what it was now, but I couldn't believe that they actually referenced it. Oh damn it, I should have written it down. Okay, next time I rewatch, I'll try and pick up on it, because I heard this reference and I was like, that is such an oblique reference in The Town That Dreaded Sundown in Scream. It was one of those type of references that you're like, you would not think it.
I don't know if we're thinking of the same one, but
what are you thinking of?
No, I can't remember now, but there's one a bit like you. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's in either the first episode or the second. So we might be thinking of the same one, where I only noticed it last time I was watching and I thought, okay. That's
so one of us will have to watch it and we'll have to put in the comments of this video, pin a comment, be like, this was the reference. But even just the humor in season 1 is still, I mean, it's not quite as sharp as it becomes, but it's still really on point. Like a lot of the stuff,
still a lot of good
even Stephen loves, there's this exchange in the very first episode where they're talking about the new girl in the locker room, and it's like, she seems really weird. I mean, what kind of a name is Buffy anyway? Hey, Aphrodisia. Oh, hey. And it's like, who called their kid Aphrodisia?
I didn't even pick up on, but I know that they're doing a lot of the cliche clueless type, like
the Valley.
Like she says nay, doesn't she?
Pause. It's like, who speaks like that? No one speaks like that. With her, due to the extreme.
I mean, in your average episode, even if it's a weaker episode, there's still so much sharp dialogue to enjoy. Like humor. And another actually good Willow moment I remembered is I really enjoy, even though the joke itself makes no sense, I actually really enjoyed the computer gag with her and Cordelia in
I love that.
It makes no sense because computers don't work like that.
Don't work like that. No, but
you can't delete stuff that way. But it's a funny gag, and I sort of like it as it's almost like Willow using her smarts to like rebel against Cordelia. It's that sort of thing. So,
and once again, it shows really that side to Willow's character that, like, even though she is meek, she will fight back. Like, if you push her too far, She's absolutely capable of fighting back. That being said, I'm watching this time. Okay, look, I know Cordelia's a bitch, and she's definitely got some lines that it's like, okay, girl, you did not have to say that. But her whole thing about Buffy, like, let's look at it from Cordelia's point of view, right? You're at the Bronze, you're hanging out, you go to the bathroom, you think everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, this little blonde girl comes screaming out of nowhere, pins you against the wall by your throat, and tries to stab you with a stake. Like,
Yeah.
I would be thinking that she was a freak as well.
A bit sus,
And
yeah.
so I do think,
That's true.
I think of all the Scoobies, Cordelia obviously gets the least development in season 1. I did notice this time around that for the first few episodes, she really is just the typical mean girl. Like, she doesn't really add much to the episodes until you get Out of Mind, Out of Sight, which of course is a very pivotal episode for Cordelia and really a turning point for her character.
Yeah.
So I like that that they establish her that, like, yeah, she's the mean popular girl, but there might be something else to her. Maybe there are some more layers here. Maybe there's something else going on. And so I like that development that they give her that in Out of Mind, Out of Sight.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I'm personally a big Cordelia fan, and I think she does have a lot of the best lines, and I think
she's got some great stuff.
Charisma Carpenter is so good. You know, her delivery for some of it. Yeah, it's not just the humor is good; it's the way she delivers it. Like, it's razor sort of sharp, and
yeah, it is.
She is a nice little character arc sort of thing where I do enjoy how you slowly see her getting a bit more interested in the supernatural stuff and her with the Scoobies, you know, because there's an episode early in season 2 where she's actually like doing the stakes with them in the library, that sort of thing. So even though like she might still play up the shallow act and, you know, would I really be seen dead with you guys, there obviously is a natural sort of development where she is actually, whether she admits it or not, she is sort of growing more attached to them, and there is a bit more going on. Because actually it's telling, isn't it, then by the end of season 1, her and Willow are actually hanging out a little bit, like in Prophecy Girl. They're talking about boys, so there actually is. It's sort of interesting, isn't it, because Cordelia and Buffy never really have a friendship because they're so competitive with each other.
They're alpha personalities, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they get to a point where there's a mutual respect, but never
but they'll
a
never be
friendship.
close. No.
Whereas I actually do see Willow and Cordy as friends later on.
Yeah, and we'll see more of that in season 2 as well.
And obviously they talk on the phone in Angel, so you get the impression that they kept in touch and stuff. So no, I do. I mean, because I enjoy Cordelia anyway because of Charisma Carpenter. But yeah, obviously when she gets a bit more to do towards the end of season 1 and after that, it's a bit more satisfying. But, you know, that's a good example of the subversion of that sort of character.
And again, like, just something that the Whedonverse and the Buffyverse does so well is taking these archetypes and then turning them on their heads. You know, you think this is just the popular mean girl, but it turns out there's a lot more depth to her. I also really love how in Prophecy Girl she kind of comes to the rescue and saves Jenny and Willow when they're about to be attacked by vampires. And then I absolutely love that during the final battle she bites a vampire on the hand and then she's like, "See how you like it." And it's like, yeah, you go, girl. You are awesome.
Yeah, her getting in on the fight, and isn't she the one who starts whacking, or is that might be?
No, she does. I think one of them grabs like the sign and starts like
that's really funny.
No, it's really great. So Cordelia, another again, just I think again, I know the season's not as strong as others, but the fact that you can see all of this foundation being laid for the characterization as it goes on.
Another thing I like about her in season 1 is that in her own way she is taking an interest in education. I love, you know, the things
in her own way.
in her own way. You know, I love the scene in the class where they're talking like about Marie Antoinette. Is it in the first episode?
No, that's in season. That's I think is in season.
Oh, is it next
2.
season?
Yeah,
I
but
thought it was
season
this
1
season.
does have the great one where she's talking when they're talking about the Merchant of Venice. And they're talking about Shylock, and she's like, how about color me totally self-involved?
Yeah. Is it when she's talking about the peasants? That might be.
Yeah. I mean, Maria, was it like, and the peasants were all depressed? I think you mean oppressed.
Yeah,
whatever.
That's a good
They
line.
were cranky.
That's
I love that. And Maria Antoinette was nice. She was going to let them have cake.
I also like, actually, in Out of Mind, Out of Sight.
Yep.
Then she actually has a favourite teacher in that.
Yes,
you know, she actually levitates towards that teacher. So that's what I mean. In her own way, she is.
And she's even asking the teacher about help on her assignment and stuff like that. So yeah, you definitely see the layers. I gotta say, Out of Mind, Out of Sight is another one of those episodes that is actually really creepy when you like think about it. When you think about like this invisible girl just walking around the school. The bat scene I actually find quite disturbing when she beats Mitch up with the bat, and then the fact that she was going to disfigure Cordelia at the end. Like, she wasn't going to kill her, she was actually going to disfigure her. That being said, the end of Out of Mind, Out of Sight is one of my favorite endings, and I feel like it's almost a little bit X-Files-ish. You know, the way they sent her to like assassination school. I thought that was a really cool beat, I thought. But yeah.
It's obviously something that has been brought up with Buffy fans. Disappointment then they didn't bring Marcy back. That would have been good. It is a bit disappointing,
isn't it? And Claire Duvall, I like Claire Duvall as an actress as well.
Yeah, like overall, I think that's an okay episode. I don't think it's one of the best, but I quite like the idea of it and the metaphor of it, and it's obviously because there are some good guest stars over the run of the show, and she probably feels like the first one that stands out in that, because obviously this was early in her career and she went on to be a bit bigger later, but because this would have been right before The Faculty.
Yes. The Faculty was 98 or 99. So
the next sort of year or two. So that was a good cameo, guest star appearance sort of thing.
And just the horror of literally turning invisible because no one notices you, that's pretty intense. I have a soft spot for Out of Mind, Out of Sight because the VHS that I mentioned that I owned, it was that and Prophecy Girl. So those two episodes I have a bit of a soft spot for because they were some of the originals. But I think that episode really shows Buffy's compassion and Buffy's empathy and just Buffy as a character. So I have to say, I have to admit something. Even though Buffy has been one of my favorite shows for so long, Buffy as a character is actually someone I've never really connected with. She's never actually been one of my favorite characters. I think when I was younger, she just had some personality traits that I just didn't mesh well with. And when you're the same age as characters, it's much easier to kind of dismiss them. But now that I'm older and am literally old enough to be her mother, I see her now through completely different eyes. So I'm watching season 1 and she's just so young. She's 16, man. And I'm watching it. I'm like, you're putting this burden on this 16-year-old girl. And you just see right from the first episode how hard she is on herself and how much she takes it to heart when she feels that she's failed her duty. When she believes that Jesse's been taken and killed, she thinks that it's her fault. You know, she immediately takes on that burden. And then you see, I never realized how compassionate Buffy can be and how empathetic she can be. I think she's so good with Amy. Well, I mean, it's Catherine, but she thinks it's Amy. Or even when they're talking about, the invisible girl, when they're talking about Marty, she's like, she was so lonely. She's not doing this, because she's some big evil person. She's doing it because we ignored her and we did this to her. And I think season 1 Buffy, because she hasn't been weighted down with all the depressing, horrible things that are going to happen to her over the seasons. She's a much lighter character. She's very bubbly. She's very fresh. She obviously, has a lot of confidence and is very sure of herself. And I think that her characterization over season 1, with her responsibility and learning to take on the mantle of the Slayer, is really interesting. And obviously it culminates in Prophecy Girl. And Sarah in Prophecy Girl she just blows me away when she has that scene where she's talking about how she quits and she doesn't want to be the Slayer anymore. And I just think that is such a great scene. And then the fact that she ends up facing her responsibility. And obviously, as we get into season 2, we can talk about the trauma of what happened and, what that did to her and how it affected her. But I found season 1 Buffy absolutely delightful.
A lighter Buffy in season 1, the character is a bit more quippy. It feels like obviously she still has that sort of Valley Girl style feel, but there's a lot of fun, a lot of witty stuff with it. There's some good witty stuff in Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, for example. She's very funny and cute in that, and exploring this idea of her wanting to have a normal teenage life and being and that's an important theme of the show, which they only expand on as it goes on, because as she gets a bit older, it starts looking at can she be a regular girl? Can she have a regular education? Can she have a regular sort of career outside of being a Slayer? In that pilot, like when he just slams the book down, I mean, it's a bit, dial it back a bit, show.
It's a bit over the top, isn't it, man?
But no, she's a good actress, and I mean, I think you realise pretty early then she's the only one for this role, but it's only later on when she has some of the more big dramatic moments then you realise what a good actress she is, and then she is the perfect person for this role. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Considering she did this role for 7 seasons and the character goes through so much and so many different things, it's one of the best acting performances I've seen on TV, because she carries it all the way through.
She really does, doesn't she?
Occasionally there might be an off scene, but it's very rare considering how much she's on screen during the course of these 7 seasons. So it's a really great performance, and Hannigan gets underrated when it comes to the more dramatic scenes with Willow, because
I know. I agree.
I think Sarah Michelle Gellar as a dramatic actress gets her due. I think Anthony Stewart Head quite rightly gets his due, and a lot of people do. But Willow, obviously, she's a very quirky, quippy sort of character, so there's a lot of good comedy with her and some great lines, but there are actually, throughout the show, moments with Willow where there's a lot of good drama, and she does drama when she needs to. She can do different things apart from just the comedy, and so I think Hannigan is always seen as a good comic actress, which she definitely is, but I think she proved in the more dramatic scenes as Willow then she can do serious acting as well, drama. So
definitely.
I think that gets overlooked.
Yeah, well, that scene you pointed out in Prophecy Girl, I mean, that's a dramatic scene, and she's so good in that scene, and even just some of the darker moments. But no, I've always enjoyed Willow's more dramatic turns. I mean, obviously, yes, Allison, like you said, great comedic timing, really funny character. But no, I agree. And as we get through the seasons and we start to get to the later seasons, we can definitely discuss more like Willow's storylines and the dramatic turns that she gets to take. I think a lot of the actors on this show are just really, really good. They do know how to do the balance between drama and comedy, and I think that just works really well. There are a few I think that can't quite straddle it as well, but for the most part, I think a lot of them, they do get it. Now, I have a question I want to ask you, because I do. Okay. I want to ask you. I know that you don't like Bangel as a ship. But how did you feel watching season 1 this time around? Do you still dislike it? Did you find anything that you liked about it, or was it just Blair from the beginning for you?
In season 2, because obviously, like in season 1, apart from the episode Angel and maybe a little bit in Prophecy Girl, and there's certain things I quite like the way they used Angel in the penultimate episode, Out of Mind, Out of Sight. Because it made sense having him in that episode because they actually set up a bit of Prophecy Girl, his involvement. But it's one of those. They didn't really quite know what to do with that character at first, so there's good moments. I mean, I'm not going to deny they have great chemistry, and that moment in Angel when they have that first kiss, but also there's a spark. There's great chemistry there, and I do have an unpopular opinion with them a bit later.
Okay.
When we get to season 3, I think, but Angel as a character, once you get more of him and into his arc and backstory, he's a much more interesting character, and by the nature of their relationship, it's obviously a kingpin of the show, what the show is saying, because what happens with Angel and what's revealed about him, and then, I mean, even in season 1, you sort of get the basics of it, because, Giles has that line, like, of a slayer in love with a vampire.
A vampire in love with a slayer.
It's rather poetic, isn't it?
In a maudlin sort of way.
Yeah, that sort of sums it up a little bit. So it's obviously an interesting idea for them to do that. This idea of a romance which is almost doomed from the start, but maybe in many ways it makes a lot of sense because they are both outsiders in their own way, sort of thing. But so we can talk more about that, because it's not great in season 1, but I think that's mostly just because he's not given that much to do.
No.
And we don't find that. It has its moments, as I said, Angel is a big episode, and the stuff, pretty much everything with them in that episode I like, but it's obviously not the best in season 1 because they don't really know what they're doing with him a lot of the time. And I don't think, because he's not in every episode, is he?
No, he's not.
Show up sometimes.
No,
and then...
he's a guest star in season 1. He's not even in the credits in season 1. So I do like the pilot. Yeah, I think Welcome to the Hellmouth is solid. I don't think it's one of the best pilots I've seen, but I think it's solid. I think it establishes everyone really well. I actually quite like Angel's appearance in Welcome to the Hellmouth. I like that, like, watching it this time around. I forgot that season 1 Angel has a bit of an edge to him. Like, he's a little bit creepy. Like, he's kind of, he's hanging around in the shadows, kind of just watching Buffy, lurking about, showing up randomly, giving out leather jackets. It's like, dude, what's going on here, huh? What are we doing here? But I kind of like it because I think it works for the season 1 feel. You have this weird kind of mysterious dude who keeps popping up, and obviously you're not supposed to know originally that he's a vampire. I knew when I first saw this. But that would have been a big reveal,
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
Would have been a big wham moment. Plus, I do like that it does kind of foreshadow what's going to happen in season 2. The fact that when they kiss, his vampire side comes out, kind of foreshadows the whole, when they have sex, he becomes the pure demon. So it's probably unintentional, but I do like that little bit of foreshadowing. It kind of emphasizes the connection. And I think that Buffy and Angel in season 1 only really work because Sarah and David have such good chemistry, it makes any scene they have very charged. I really like the scene at the end of Teacher's Pet where he comes to her at the Bronze and she's like, oh, you can have your jacket back. And he's like, well, it looks better on you. And then as he walks away, she's just kind of like, oh boy. It's like she knows, it's like she can feel in that moment,
that's the moment where she knows
I'm actually starting to fall for him. Yeah. And then I think that season 1, given what Buffy and Angel became, it's interesting to see them not be quite as intense and dramatic in season 1. It's nice to actually have a little bit more low-key Angel, it's not like when you kiss me, I want to die and all that bullshit that we get in season 2. But I really quite like it. What was really funny is Oh yeah. No, I loved Angel,
That's
but
a hot
boy,
take.
do I
Yeah.
have some issues to talk about when we get to season
Okay.
2.
Oh,
But
cool. We can get there.
But it was really funny because I love Angel the series so much, and because I love Angel and Darla so much, they had one scene together in the episode Angel, and I just went absolutely rabid. I was like, "Oh my god, it's Angel and Darla! They're together!" I was beside myself. I was like, "Yes, give me more of this."
You You know
Because
what
I
I
just,
enjoy in that episode?
mm.
I enjoy Darla with the guns,
No,
and
what is
it's
that?
like
Why is
something
Darla
out of a
using?
western. It's
It's
like,
ridiculous. Oh my
but
god,
it's
because you
so
know
fun.
right then that they really have not established Darla's character. Because like, in what universe is Darla going to use guns? Please, it's so bad. But that's one of the little hiccups of season 1, you know? Well, there obviously
Yeah.
there's little things here and there, like with characterization and mythology that obviously hasn't been established. And the fact that Darla, I mean, when you watch season 1, you'd never guess that she goes on to become such a
Mm.
significant character. Like there's just no way you could ever guess that. So I guess that's, you know, the brilliance of what happened with this show and with this universe and how it unfolded and grew and everything to
Yeah.
see where it started and where it ended up. But I think season 1 obviously does have its flaws, but it is honestly one of my favorite seasons because I just
Okay.
love the freshness of it and I love the nostalgia of it. I love the cheesiness. And I love the way it subverts like horror tropes. And I really love the horror feel to season 1 because the show
Mm.
definitely loses that. It becomes more of a supernatural show than a horror show. And so I miss that early season's kind of eeriness and creepiness and
See,
the darkness of it.
well, that's interesting, and that's something we can return to as we go through the seasons because, yeah, I've never really thought about it in that way. You know, like in many ways, I just sort of thought. Obviously, some seasons are more horror centric than others, but no, I always thought of horror as a big part of Buffy. You know,
Oh,
even in later seasons. So,
well, that'll be
but
interesting when we get to
I
them.
get what you mean. I get what you mean
Mm.
about season 1 maybe having a traditional horror sort of feel, but Boreanaz comes as an actor, and because
Yeah.
it really stands out in that first season. This is his first acting gig because he's
Yeah.
really.
He's
So
not great,
that's
is he? He's not. I watch it and I'm like, oh, David, you come so far,
oh, well,
just
yeah,
so far,
yeah.
because yeah, he really is quite wooden, and he seems almost like he doesn't quite know what to do with himself while he's on camera. You know, it's like,
Very
oh dear.
awkward. Yeah,
Yeah, but you know, kind of adds to the character. You know, luckily Angel as a character in season 1, you don't have much to do, so the awkward kind of like creeper in the
okay.
shadows kind of works for him ish.
You're doing your best to
I
defend
am.
it.
I am. I just love
But
Angel as a character. Even like back in season 1 of Buffy, I have to defend him.
fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, it's just something, and this is something I might talk more about as we go on. But I think because I'm so into the core group, like the Scoobies and stuff,
Mm,
sometimes I feel, especially when he gets a bigger role, I think maybe Angel is a bit of a distraction at times. I think that's why I like that he later got his own show where he can have
mm.
his own arc and backstory and expand on things because it's difficult, you know, there's only so much screen time, and because in a way I come to Buffy more for the Scoobies and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and the villains, and obviously there's a twist with Angel in that sense next season. Have a real soft spot for, and I
Oh,
like a
okay.
lot. And it's this might be an unpopular opinion, but one of my favourite season 1 episodes is the puppet show.
I love the puppet
I
show.
love,
Are you
yes,
kidding me?
get in.
I love the puppet show.
It's so
It's
good.
so cheesy and
Mhm.
so funny.
The puppet
Oh,
show is
Sid
great.
the dummy, man.
He's
Dummies.
so
I'm
great.
with Buffy. They are not cool. Just
Creepy.
no,
Yeah,
everything about the puppet show is so good. So if
yeah.
you want to talk about why you love it, and I'll just chime in.
Well, first of all, we get another great debut.
Hmm.
Snyder, he's so good. I mean,
So good.
because Fluey was a decent character, but I never felt like he was ever going to be as good as Snyder becomes.
No.
And just from the moment he walks on screen, Snyder is such a funny, entertaining character, such a slimy little weasel.
I know.
I think we might have talked about this, but it's good then you have those authority figures who are sort of putting up like hurdles for the Scooby sort of thing.
Yes.
So not every villain on the show is sort of supernatural.
Yeah.
And there's just something about a character like Snyder where you sort of feel like every high school has one, maybe, that sort of stick in the mud who's like really sort of slime. But from the moment he walks on screen, he's so funny. His lines about, you know, like Flutie being all woody headed and little, that's why he's got eaten. And I just love Giles' line. I think it might have been a bit more complicated than that. So there's some good Snyder and Giles scene, actually. There's some good stuff with them in season 2, actually.
Yes,
but yeah,
there is. There's some great stuff.
Armour Shinnaman is such a gem of an actor.
Good, isn't he? He's brilliant.
I'm actually watching him at the moment in Deep Space Nine, the Star Trek show, because he's in that, and like he's under makeup in that because his character is an alien, but you can just tell by the voice and the mannerisms that's the guy who played Snyder. He's so good. But yeah, I absolutely love that opening scene, or the first time we see Snyder anyway, and the introduction. I like the red herring of it because it definitely hints that he could be the demon in it. That's really clever because at the time it's his first episode, so some people might actually think, because there's that shot of him in the dark, isn't it?
Yeah, where he like creeps up on Buffy and he's just like standing there, and it's like, no, I love that red herring aspect to him. It's so good. It works so well.
Yeah, so I enjoy like the mystery of the episode, like who's it gonna be, the whodunit. I love the scenes where they're like interviewing the different students about it, and Xander's line, Cordelia's line. First of all, she gets like the girl's name wrong.
It was like Emma was like my best friend, Emily.
Yeah, that's your best friend.
And then I love that. All I can think is it could have been me. We can dream.
That's so good. At any time, like Xander gets stuck interviewing Cordelia is just gold. Yeah.
I also love that moment with Cordelia and Giles where she's like going on about her song and he's just like, I'm sorry, your hair. And she's like, there's something wrong with my hair? Oh my God. And then Xander was right. Worked like a charm.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, the whole like rehearsal and talent show, there's so many good scenes with that. I mean, it literally opens with Cordelia butchering that ballad, and just Giles's gone out expression as he has to endure it is so funny.
Yeah. Plus I love the callback an angel with that song.
Yeah, the movie premise. I really enjoy Sid. I enjoy the Shining. The Shining reference in it with Xander, red rum. Xander's really good in that episode. But yeah, it's really clever, really smart, really entertaining, some great dialogue. Snyder's great. And actually a really different sort of ending, isn't it? It's the only time they've ended an episode like that.
I love that. First of all, I love when they've just killed the demon and the curtain opens and Snyder's like, I don't get it. What is it? Avant-garde? Yeah. And then the Oedipus, the Oedipus performance is so good.
And they do like a split screen, don't they? Because it actually has the credits alongside them doing the performance, which is the only time they do it
Willow
like that. Yeah.
Just running off the stage. You know, when her line comes and Buffy and Xander are just like, okay, we'll just stand here. No, everything about that is so good. I love the Puppet Show. Look, I love most of the season 1 episodes, but I have to admit the Puppet Show is definitely one like I think is elevated.
That's good. I wasn't sure because.
Oh no, I love it. It's
that seems to be a Marmite episode where you either go with it and enjoy it or you don't. But it's up there for me for season.
The whole dummy thing there was a Goosebumps book called Night of the Living Dummy, and it had like several sequels,
All right,
and the
yeah, I
dummy in
might
it,
have seen
Slappy.
images of that.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
really reminded me of that. It gave me that vibe. And I always find, even though I know Sid is a good guy, I always find the scene where he's in Buffy's room really creepy, where you just hear his little
So do
feet
I.
like run across the floor. And oh my God, if I was Buffy, I would be seriously freaked out too. I'm with you. So many great lines, so many great exchanges. I love when Snyder forces them into being in the talent show
Yeah.
and like uses their own words against. He's like, I'm sure the three of you will come up with a wonderful act for the others to watch
Yeah.
and mock and laugh.
Yeah,
at."
so Giles
It's
gets
just
his
so
sort of comeback.
Giles
on that.
gets his own
That's
back.
really good.
And yeah, I love the reveal of who the demon is and the red herring with
So do
both
I.
Sid
Yeah.
and what's his, is it Rodney? No. The guy that owns him. I can't remember his name.
Actor's actually pretty good. I think he's a decent one-shot actor. He gets across, you know, sort of the confusion of that character, and when you find out he's got like brain cancer or something.
Yeah, that's sad. I love Buffy's fight with the dummy, and then at one point she's got him like pinned up against the wall. It's just like Buffy literally.
I always
facing off
enjoy
against the
Giles
dummy.
getting in tight scrapes as well, like when he's in the like the sort of thing, the
In the guillotine, yeah. Poor Giles. Oh man.
Because that's a good twist. Because at first they think it's Willow, don't
It's Willow,
they? Because
yes.
they're going after.
But I like when they realize it's like, oh, well, anyway, it's Giles, and he is really smart. Make it through season 1. It's like, no. You don't make it through season 1. You enjoy season 1. You know?
Well, what I'll say to that is, I think I agree. And again, I think it's fair to say I have a lot of fun anytime I rewatch season 1, even though for me it's the weakest season. But you're right. I think it's to its credit that it is such an easy season to watch. But I think the sort of make it through season 1 just comes from the fact that the show wasn't what it would become. And
fair enough.
I think sort of mileage sort of varies on some of the episodes, you know, but it's still a very watchable season, but it's and obviously it's quite a short season as well, but I'm with you. And I think another thing to say is just because Buffy's one of my favorite shows. I mean, when I do a rewatch of Buffy, I'm doing a full rewatch, so I'm gonna watch season 1 no matter what. And you know, it's just contrast. I mean, some of the later seasons I might like more than season 1, but in its own way, season 1, because it is so cheesy and so like you said, so 90s and stuff, it does make it a very easy watch. So it has that in its favor, I think. About a show where you get through season 1 and you don't want to come back. It's not like, as you said, there's little things in this season that show the potential of the show. So there's just enough to kind of say, I mean, okay, if you started season 2 and you could see no growth, then you might say, okay, maybe this is never going to happen. But there's just enough in season 1 to plant those seeds where you can see the potential of the show. So it's a solid first season, I think. It's not a case of it being like a bad first season. You know, as debut seasons go, I think it's at least solid sort of thing. And you can see the potential for later. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you to rate the season overall. What would you give it out of 10?
I'm probably being generous when I say this, but I really love season 1. So I'd probably go with an 8.5 out of 10, 8.5.
Okay.
I'm losing a couple of points because it does drag a little. There's a little bit of iffiness when it comes to characterization and special effects, but overall, I just really love this season. So 8.5 for me. What about you?
Well, no surprise. I'm going lower, but not super low. As I said, it's a solid first season, so I'll give it about 6.5.
Okay.
Solid. Solid. The lowest score I'm going to give any season.
True.
That's pretty
very
good.
true.
Thoughts on Buffy season 1? I hope you enjoyed this video. We're obviously going to make our way through all 7 seasons and do like big sort of meaty discussion type videos such as this, but we will return next week with a kind of wrap up of season 1. I mean, this is the wrap up in a way, but we're going to do our favourite and least favourite episodes mind list if we can compromise.
We might be able to with season 1. It sounds like we're
if Rachel tries to get nightmares on there might be a problem. There might be a nightmare, I'll say that, if she tries to convince me to put nightmares on.
All right, so if you don't see Keith further on during the week, it's because we kind of killed each other over this fight. But, maybe we'll film it. You'll have a good bloodbath.
Do an MVP of the season, who we thought. We'll each do our own MVP, who we thought was the best character of the season, ready next season. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rank every episode as we go along through the 7th season. So, and I'll see what Rachel thinks of my order when I come back. And let me just say, Nightmares is going to be near the bottom.
Yeah, well, you suck, don't you?
I'm not saying overall by the end, but I'm just saying for season 1, it's going to be near the bottom.
Well, we wouldn't be us if we didn't have a few disagreements. Just because Keith's opinion is wrong, like he needs to realize this, but we're working on it.
iRobot You, Jane, is way more entertaining than the Nightmares is.
That's
Nightmares is boring. Okay.
Okay, we should probably stop before there's any bloodshed.
Okay, so let us know your thoughts of Buffy season 1 in the comments below. Are you more with Rachel? Are you more with me? What are your overall thoughts? Hey, this is the thing. I actually think there might be more people on your side. I'm not actually sure it is that much of an. I think I'm the renegade on this.
Yeah. He's running wild, people.
So let us know your thoughts of the season overall, some of your highs and lows. Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel Macdonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. I do have several Buffy? Oh, we've been talking too long. Buffy episodes. Very nice. Yes, if you want to go and check out, I've got a few already dissecting the show. And my Tumblr and Twitter are also linked there. Now, Keith usually puts a link in the description. He might not today because he doesn't want to admit that the brilliance of Nightmares beats iRobot You, Jane. But if he's feeling benevolent, he might put it in. So come follow me everywhere, people.
Very good. Thanks, guys. And I mean, just like an unprofessional git, I was looking at my phone just saying, I'm sorry. I got distracted. What a way to end. Thanks, guys. Keep it Buffy. We'll see you soon. I can't think of a witty line. This podcast is definitely doomed.
Grr.
Yeah, of course. I should have went with that. See you later, guys. Take care.